Hey everybody, this is Harvey Sunny Wasserman back for the 274th Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call, otherwise known as GREEP. We are in the midst of total global chaos here. We're in the wake of the World Cup, which was quite interesting, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And we're really going to focus on election protection for the first hour today. It is really gotten dire. We're hoping to be joined by Ray MCCLENDON from Georgia with some very, very interesting developments there. We've also got Alison Green, and we're going to definitely discuss the situation with women and voting. That is, of course, women are the majority voters in this country, and their rights are under attack as never before. And so we really want to deal with that heads up. We also have a U.S. senator from Alabama who's challenging the election of two U.S. senators from Georgia. Very interesting development there. In the second hour, we're going to do really focus on AI. We have one of the legendary greats. He's been with us before, Lee Felsenstein, who was present at the creation of the personal computer in the original Silicon Valley in the 1960s and 70s. The Homebrew Club, legendary in its own time, to talk about AI. There's a front page story in the New York Times today, which basically says that Google is starting to, I don't know what the word would be, sprinkle their system with AI, which to deliberately make it more difficult for people to navigate the internet. Obviously, there's a few $billion in that for the founders of Google. One's name, by the way, is Sergey Brin. He just moved this guy, is worth hundreds of billions of dollars, and he just moved out of California because he didn't want to pay a tax, the billionaire tax in California. He's too good for that. He needs the money apparently that he would use to compensate the people of California for the investments that they've made that made his billions of dollars in his possible. There is a term coined by the philosopher Plato about that. And someone take over, please, because I've got a call from Hetty Tripp and I want to take it real quick.
Okay, let me step in really quickly. And we do have Ray MCCLENDON here. Welcome, Ray, if we can get you co-hosted. But we'll definitely get you on the mic. Let's see. Yeah, our friend Hetty has been going through some stuff. So Ray, you're a co-host.
There we go. Okay, I just checked. Hetty Tripp has been a regular guest of ours. She's a friend of mine for the past 50, 60 years, and she had a heart attack. So usually she would be coming on, but she called me to tell me she's not able to come on with a report from Minnesota now. But I did get her health report, and she is okay, thank goodness. So with that, after I can't begin to tell you my disgust with Sergey Brin and Larry Page, these founders of Google, who have hundreds, literally hundreds of billions of dollars. But this one guy moved out of California to avoid paying a tax. He only made his hundred billions of dollars in California. He bought like a 30, $40 million house in Nevada, so he doesn't have to pay the tax in California. And the front page of the New York Times is reporting today that the Google is starting to play around with AI to make it more difficult to access the internet. So we are going to, yeah, good riddance is right. Stay in Nevada. And if you cross the border, I hope into California, I hope La Migra will put you in prison, Larry Page and Sergey Brin. Shame on you. So at any rate, we got the great May. We're going to get to that in the second hour. We have Lee Felsenstein, one of the great legends of the internet, of the personal computer, and we're going to go deep into AI. In this first hour, We're going to talk about women in voting. Allison Green is with us. But first, we're joined by the great Ray McClendon in Atlanta. We got a ton of stuff to talk about. So this first hour is going to be voting rights. And every hour, every first hour going forward, we have 3 months to the election. 90 days. It's terrifying to think about. But we every time now we're going to deal with voter rights, election protection. Anybody you want to have on to talk about election protection, let us know. We are graced about with Allison Green, but first we're going to have Ray, Citizens Communities United, and Ray in Georgia now. How do we? How do we describe Tommy Tuberville? By the way, and before we lose track, today also the Times carries a notice that Lindsey Graham's sister is going to run for his seat. Now, I don't know exactly how to take that. We can discuss it, but it's a very interesting development. And the candidate, who is a woman, has a Democratic nomination for the Senate seat in South Carolina, appears to be very strong. And at the time Lindsey Graham passed away, he they were running neck and neck. Again, counterintuitive, but he should have been a really strong candidate. And South Carolina has been, if there's no Republican stronghold in the country, it's South Carolina. Remember, they were the first to secede from the Union. So she's probably going to get the nomination in South Carolina. Ray, you're bordering on South Carolina. Got anything to say about that? Would be very interesting. But let's hear about what Tommy Tuberville, the duly elected U.S. senator from Alabama, is saying now about the two senators duly elected from Georgia. And remember, we're not making this up. Okay, Ray, go ahead, please.
Well, I'll start right there, Sluggo, by saying you use the term duly elected, and I don't know if it's appropriate because if anybody is illegitimate, it is Tommy Tuberville. He's illegitimate from the standpoint of not having any expertise, experience. He's an ex-football coach, as many people know. Failed at that in Alabama and came back. He was living in Florida, by the way. And so there's a lot of questions about whether or not he met the Senate requirement, the requirements to run for Senate from Alabama. And he certainly is under scrutiny as to whether or not he meets the requirements to run for governor, which are more stringent than they are to run for Senate. So
All
when
right,
you,
well, let me. So I said he was duly elected. Shall we change that to dubiously elected? Is that better?
yeah, that's a better term.
Okay. All right,
That's
we're good with it.
that's a better term
Okay.
because the what these MAGA folks do is a lot of the time when they are accusing someone else, they're actually projecting their own situation onto somebody else, and I think that's what we're seeing here with Tuberville. He's going to be in a big fight for governor. And so he believes that he's got to have Trump coming out strong for him. So he wants to demonstrate his loyalty to Trump by casting aspersions on the legitimacy of two truly duly elected senators from Georgia. And let me say, we were very active in those races, both the races in 2020, the runoffs in 2021, and Warnock's race in 2022. All of those races were razor thin margins. They were in the margin of error and within the prescribed vote for a audit of the votes by the Republican Secretary of State. They were all confirmed each time. So when you talk about illegitimacy, first of all, if the races were fraudulent, why would the races in 2020 only be fraudulent for the top three seats, but all the other Republicans won? In 2022, when Warnock won against a very flawed candidate in Herschel Walker. We know that in that race, there were also the statewide races for governor, lieutenant governor, and all the other constitutional offices. The Republicans won every one of those races, every one of those statewide races. So again, they're asking you to believe that the Democrats were going to cheat just for Senator Warnock's race and leave the entire Republican slate um, unburdened by this fraud on all of the other races. So it's just ludicrous charges on their face. But again, going back to Tuberville, being the one to come up with this, it's really absurd, given the scrutiny that he's under for his residency and whether or not he actually meets those requirements for the state of Alabama to run for governor. We're pulling very strongly for him to lose that spot. So he's grabbing at straws, trying to maintain his MAGA credentials and show his loyalty to Trump.
Wow, it's really mind-boggling. Of course, we had Don Siegelman, governor of Alabama, a while ago, and they threw him in prison, for God's sake. So it's amazing. So tell us, please, Allison will get you in a sec, okay? But tell us, Ray McClendon, Georgia, of course, is in the bullseye in the midterms here. You've got a Senate race, John Ossoff. And also a governor's race, which appears to be very much up for grabs as well. What is happening with voter rights in Georgia? Are you under attack? What are the key issues in Georgia that will be required to protect this election?
Well, voting rights remain under attack in Georgia every time that the state legislature convenes. So we have to look at voter suppression laws being passed by the state every year. This year we were able to fight them back on the redistricting with a powerful outpouring of support
Well, let's
from
talk
civic
about that very
engagement.
quickly, please, Ray. We talked about this when it happened, but reiterate, please, for people, what happened to the MAGA attempt to redistrict Georgia in this year's most recent legislative session?
Well, all your listeners remember the Supreme Court decision that gutted the Voting Rights Act. Georgia was one of those states where they immediately went to attempt to redistrict, given the gutting of the Voting Rights Act. They set it for a couple of weeks after, well, not a couple of weeks, a week after the actual primaries that were here in Georgia. So they had to wait a few weeks from the time that others were acting immediately in Tennessee and Louisiana and elsewhere. A couple of things happened in those races. First of all, Burt Jones, who is the lieutenant governor and the president of the state senate, lost his race to a political outsider, Jackson, who is a billionaire and says he's going to out-Trump Trump. And the other thing that happened was so that upset the apple cart with the Republicans. The governor had been strongly in the camp of Burt Jones. So he took a political hit by not being able to help get Burt Jones across the finish line. It also took Burt Jones out of play in anything going on in the Senate because he was emasculated by his primary loss. The other thing that happened is the Black civil rights organizations, the churches, the Divine Nine, and others really put together a concerted campaign with prayer vigils, with protests, with marches, with rallies, leading up to the actual morning of the first session of the legislature. It was widely publicized in state and local press. And we believe those two things had a dramatic impact on the decisions of the Republican-controlled legislature that they were not going to take up the redistricting at this time. So it was a huge victory. It was a major win. Everybody celebrated, but we know it's only temporary, and they're going to figure out how to come back at this again in probably in 1 or 2 years. So you just never know. As I said, you have voter suppression every year in the state legislature of some form of fashion. It started several years ago with something called SB 202, where they were doing ridiculous things like saying that you could not provide any food or water to people that were standing in line waiting to vote, knowing that in many of the um, marginalized communities, in the minority communities, because of previous voter suppression, there will always be long lines to vote in our communities. And so a lot of people were, just helping them to endure those lines, and that was made illegal. They followed that up with the local election board, and they went on from not the local election board, but a state election board that is dominated by MAGA, trying to control again the messaging that suggests that voting is fraudulent in the state. As an example, when the state Secretary of State's office, which under the Constitution is responsible for reviewing and controlling the voting apparatus, they went back and meaning the state legislature, went back and gave some power to the state election board, all because Raffensperger, as you remember, did not go out and find 11,780 votes for Trump. So this happens every year. This past year, we had a situation where they passed a law that says that 5 counties, the 5 largest counties in Georgia, are now prohibited from having their DA's office and the chair of their county commission run on a partisan basis. They have to run nonpartisan. Guess what? Those 5 counties represent Black voters and the majority of Democratic voters in those counties. It would be Fulton, where Atlanta is, DeKalb, and all of the metro Atlanta counties. Those are the only counties in the state now that were changed to nonpartisan, which many people believe is unconstitutional on its face. That you have a state with 159 counties and you pass a law that will only impact partisanship in 5 counties that happen to be the bluest and blackest counties in Georgia. So all of these things are going on every single year in the state. So we have to be we're delighted with the successes that we have, but we know it's a continual process of beating back the MAGA agenda.
Mind-boggling. And you have a race now. John Ossoff is running for U.S. Senate. People are starting to talk about him as a presidential candidate. They seem to forget that he's Jewish, but aside from that, are
Well, the thing about John Ossoff, first of all, John Ossoff comes out of the mentorship of John Lewis. He was very close to John, admires him dealing in what John Lewis stood for. And he has made it clear that he understands how important having a a broad coalition of voters is to his success in Georgia. And he's made it clear that in his mind, one of the reasons that Trump is so obsessed with Fulton County voters and the raid on Fulton County is because it's according to Ossoff, and he said this a couple of times, that Trump more than anything is very upset that it was black voters that took him to task and lost him the election in Georgia.
Well, how are you reasonably secure that the Georgia election will be reasonably secure? I mean,
Well, let me say it this way. I'm reasonably secure that we can beat back the state attempts to thwart the election. The challenge is going to be we have no idea what craziness the federal government is going to inflict upon Georgia and specifically those counties that I was just referring to. What Trump is going to try to do in Fulton County, in DeKalb County, those metro counties that represent such a large share of Democratic and Black voters. So that's the challenge that we're trying to brace for is to game out what might come from the federal government. We can pretty much anticipate what the state is telegraphing, and we can probably get around that. But it's the extraordinary resources of the federal government that's got us worried.
well, the other thing is, and we're all following the election closely. Usually, we're a nonpartisan call, but we all have our dog in the hunt. But what no one seems to be paying attention, everybody is, I'm sure, is watching this guy Harry Enton on CNN who talks about the polls, and he licks his chops about how badly Trump is doing in the polls. But nobody seems to be remembering that we're 3 months out, and 2 months out or 1 month out, there's going to be a gargantuan tsunami of billions of dollars pouring in from, the tech bros. And in Ohio, for example, Elon Musk has just written a check to the Republican candidate for Senate, $5 million. Just kind of, I think he searched around in his couch and found some loose change and put $5 million. Now, and how much does a $5 million contribution affect an election? Well, it's not just the media; it's at the election boards and all the other places. I mean, Ray, in Georgia, what will be the effect of a tsunami of 10 or $20 million worth of cash pouring in from the tech bros?
Well, let me put it to you this way. They're going to flood the airwaves. We know that. What we need to counterbalance with, as you know, I've argued for this for years, Harvey, is that the grassroots organizations need to be funded in order to get the marginalized vote, the low propensity voters out. It is not going to be based on TV ads and building awareness. That is going to be drowned out. They're going to cancel each other out. The difference maker will be who has the most boots on the ground from trusted messengers, delivering targeted messengers to the low propensity voters that did not come out in 2024. Any analysis you want to look at from the Brennan Center or some others will show that in 2024, the turnout gap between white voters and minority voters grew. And there are a lot of reasons for that, going back to voter suppression. But one of the reasons is also that the grassroots organizations were not funded to the point to get out and mobilize those voters. Um, the Harris campaign in 24, the Abrams campaign in 22 made the same strategic decisions that they thought that they could make it work with their own internal campaign staffs. And those staffs, although they're great people, don't have the independent connections in the communities that are legitimate and that people respect, um, to the point of getting that vote out. And so the critical thing is that you can't rely on independents. You can't rely on, unfortunately, you can't rely on moderates. You got to rely on your base. And in Georgia, you know, almost a third of the registered voters are Black voters, and that makes that opportunity even more significant if you put the money into going into the those Black voter precincts in not just Metro Atlanta, but also all of the key top counties across the state, as well as in the Black Belt in South Georgia. That is what will make the difference, as it did in 2020. That can make the difference in 2026 if somebody's got the brains to do that.
Are you getting
Well,
help?
we'll get to Allison, Carla, Lynn, and Mike in a sec. The last question I want to ask you, Ray, has the Ossoff campaign and have the other the Bottoms campaign and the other major campaigns got the message to fund grassroots organizing in this election, or are they making the same mistake again?
We're in discussions with both of them. The candidates are both talking positively about it. Uh, Again, you got to remember how these campaign staffs take on a life of their own, to somewhat independent of the candidate, and they bring in a lot of people from outside. So, you know, once you get beyond the primaries, they take on a whole different life unto themselves. And so I'm hopeful, but I'm not under any illusion that because the candidates themselves appreciate what can be done. We just had a call with Ossoff this past Wednesday, where he reiterated how important it was for groups like ours, the Divine Nine, and our group called Team Unity, to participate in helping him get across the finish line. But but we know how these campaign operatives work, and it's a whole different industry unto itself, and it's hard to pierce it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we've got an uphill battle in front of us.
So we got two elections going on here. We got the election inside the campaigns, which is the same. I know John Steiner's on the call in Ohio 2 years ago. We had a conversation with Sherrod Brown's campaign. Oh no, it was 4 years ago with Tim Ryan's campaign manager, and he basically blew us off, and they lost. And so once again here, John Steiner's with us. This guy, he knew more than God, and they lost. And it would be horrifying if once again the campaign staffs of these candidates lose the elections again because they get their cut from the TV ads and they have their own little organizations and they don't go door to door. And Ray, you're the great guru
Well,
of that in Georgia. We wish you
right.
well.
And it's
Um,
not just going door to door, it's relational organizing, where you're going door to door with people who folks know. In other words, you can't have people running um, localized canvassing coming here from Boston, or New Jersey. You need local people. I can't go into Savannah. I need to work with people in Savannah, but I'm not the one that needs to go to Savannah. I don't need to go to Valdosta, Georgia. We have people there who know the local communities, the right ministers, the right teachers, the right professionals. Okay, the right folks from the Masonic lodges. You need that kind of expertise and relationships, and that's the difference that they don't seem to want to get. And one of the reasons they don't want to get it, in my view, is because a lot of these folks are professional consultants who are going from campaign to campaign, and they are on for the ride. And unfortunately, a part of their performance part of their compensation is based upon media, and so it's difficult to uncouple the funding that comes in with just doing media buys, because there's some incentives there, and we need to change that. And again, it's not changing it to say that broadcast TV advertising is not needed. It's just that if you could just take away 10% of that to put with grassroots organizations, you could have a dramatically different result in key communities.
It's infuriating to me we still have to have this discussion. I mean, Ray, you should be running these campaigns, and these guys would win. And that's how Ossoff and Warnock won in 2020. Why does the wheel have to be reinvented? I don't get it. Unless, well, the corporate Democrats are in a whole other world, and we'll continue having this discussion. Ray, it's really great to have you with us. Allison Green, you want to jump in with Ray McClendon, please?
Yeah, I mean, I want to start off by saying, I mean, I give so many kudos to Georgia overall because, and I mean, I could not agree with with almost, I can't disagree with anything Ray said, and I adamantly agree with everything he's saying. And one of the things is that I sit here and I'm in Florida, and I'm based on my research, I've found that this is kind of like, to me, a ground zero or an epicenter of election interference. But the reality is that Georgia is also a hub, and it's one that I've actually had the honor. I've done some research in years past, and I've been shocked at the history. And what my independent research has led me to understand is that Georgia is, we talk about election integrity and election security, and those are kind of, I guess, really whitewashed terms, because the reality is that we are right now in the fight of our lives for our elections, and there's nobody who's doing it better than Georgia. Georgia is been for decades fighting back in ways that have pissed off Trump. And I think that Georgia is renting a lot of space in Georgia's mind, in Trump's mind, because they keep winning. And what they do is, from my experience, they don't even
Well,
necessarily
that's
advertise
it's an otherwise vacant house, but go ahead.
There you go. So I actually went back, and my research took me back to 2002 and the HAVA Act, because what a lot of people don't know is the HAVA Act in 2002 brought electronic voting machines into the picture. That is the kind of year that we went down this path of electronic voting. And what happened is before 2002, I found this story fascinating, but there is a senator in Georgia, an incumbent senator who was very popular. I believe his name was Max Cleland, and
Yes.
probably a lot of people would know him. I mean, this was somebody who actually literally gave up three limbs for this country. And to me, he's the equivalent of a Tammy Baldwin in today's terms. And he was popular. And suddenly, out of nowhere, when they actually brought in electronic voting, all of the sudden, his opponent claims that he wasn't enough of a patriot.
Well,
I
but
mean, the
the
man that
point
gave
is now this
injury.
this year, but this year, Allison, we
Mhm.
do have paper ballots. It is Ray.
No, no, no. Yeah. So
Most of the ballots will be cast by mail.
that's what I was going to say is I give a lot of credit. We went down that road in 2002. And what happened is Stacey Abrams in 2018, when she lost her election in 2018, she did a lot of work behind the scenes and they went with a court case that actually said to the judge, look, these machines are old. They have no paper ballots. And that's actually the point that I was making, Sonny, is that it was what happened in 2018 before the 2020 election was that Georgia was forced to actually replace their voting machines with ones that would make things auditable. And that is why we believe that that it's a ridiculous story that John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock were not legitimate, because the reality is they did hand counts three different times, I believe it was, and Ray can tell me if I'm
Yeah.
incorrect there. But in other words, there has been there's been an interesting shift in the Republican Party in Georgia, because you actually have kind of the pro-Trump team of the Republican Party against the Raffensperger and the Secretary of State, who are the same exact party. They're Republicans, but they're saying, no, I can't find 11,780 votes. I have to look at the votes and trying to accurately count the votes to be the will of the people. And what Ray was talking about there, I think, is so right, is that there is a state kind of effort within Georgia that is doing everything it can to accurately count the votes.
Well,
And there is kind of an attack by the federal government and as Ray
right.
said, we can't even game it. And now, for example, what
Okay.
Sonny, we've talked about is the women is now, imagine if the women of Georgia are taken off of the rolls, for example, and can't cast their ballot, and
Well,
how much of a
we want
difference
to
it would
talk
make.
about that.
Yeah.
Yes, Ray, voter ID in Georgia, which is, and Allison and I will talk about that. We'll get to Carla, Lynn, and Mike. What is the situation with voter ID in Georgia? We all know that nationwide, Trump wants to use voter ID to disenfranchise women because of the disparity between married names and birth names. Is that what's the situation with that in Florida now?
Yeah,
Or
in
Georgia.
Georgia, the situation is you can use your valid driver's license. And if you don't have a driver's license, you can use a state issued or a federal issued ID.
So there's no requirement in Georgia for registering to vote to have a birth certificate. Is that right?
No, but no, it's not. But again, most people use driver's licenses, and in driver's license, they have tightened up the provisions to get your driver's license, where you have to have more documentation than you did in the past.
And then,
So it is more difficult. It became more difficult a few years ago, but you can use your ID. As an example, Wayne Mullen said that real ID will not satisfy the requirements for voting. Now, real ID is something that the states have been working on for years, again, to deal with situations just like this.
right.
And so real ID is a part of Georgia. A number of states have gone to this in order to have a stronger system. Let's cut to the chase. Okay, let's cut to the reality here of what the SAVE Act is a voter suppression bill. It is a voter suppression bill, period, full stop. All of this other stuff that we're dealing with around the edges, what we're talking about, whether it be with ballots and paper ballots or not, I love all Ray Lutz and all our guys in Allison. This is subterfuge to justify being able to take people off the rolls and only have people that they think will vote MAGA to be voters.
Correct.
That's
I
really
agree
the bottom line of
100%.
all of this
It's
stuff.
all over
So
the
we can
all the time.
dispense with how we got to are we using Dominion machines or some other machines? Are we using paper? We can get involved in all of that. Trump doesn't care about any of that stuff. Let's be real. All he cares about is whether or not he can get rid of enough voters that he doesn't believe are MAGA voters and get them off of the rolls. Number one. Number two, they are going to they've got this whole deep thing, and there are probably some other people on this call that could go into it a lot better than I can, but where they don't want women to vote, period. Women should not be voting. It's this evangelistic component that they have, this notion about the I don't know what you call it, but it's something like the patriarchal household where there's one vote per household, and that's by the male of the family. So all of this is caught up in that process. We are not seeing the big picture. We typically get down in the weeds, and we don't see the strategy that's being played out before us. This is about getting back to the way it was in 1790, where it was only white men with property could vote.
I think it's more like 790 actually is where they really want it, but that's right. And it's the whole subterfuge with voter ID really has to do with disenfranchising women. And one thing that many of the states have done, Ray, in terms of access to a driver's license is they've eliminated bureaus of motor vehicles, where there are whole states now where you got to go hundreds of miles just to go get a driver's license. And that's totally tied up with the right to vote.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. That happens a lot in rural communities and in rural Black communities. We see that in Georgia and Alabama. They close Department of Motor Vehicles offices.
Right.
And that makes it inherently, because the law is that you can have a driver's license or a state government issued ID, and the DMVs will issue that ID even if you don't drive anymore. Well, you take the DMV office out of a county, how are these people going to get, 20, 30, 40, 50 miles away just to get an ID? So these are all a part of the bigger issue. It used to be, again, that it was these states that were constrained by the Voting Rights Act and by a sympathetic federal government that put in check these southern states. It was primarily the states of the old Confederacy. Now you have the federal government and the Supreme Court being the dominant forces that are pushing this same dogma that we've had in the South for centuries.
So what we need, and I'm going to go to Carlos Sand and Lynn and Mike, what we need is a national movement to get the Democratic candidates to run grassroots campaigns. And that's been a theme on these calls for 20 years.
Right,
Well, our work for 20 years, the calls have been 6, but
right.
that's the bottom line. So Ray, we need to collaborate on that with Alice and other folks. Let's give Carla Sand a chance. Carla, go ahead, please.
Yes, I like that voting business that you're talking about. This is Carla from Minnesota, and I am a DFLer, a DSA member, and also a Gray Panthers, and I see that they're on this line. But my question to Ray is, I go to Georgia regularly, and I'm going again tomorrow, and I always try to visit the Democratic office over there in Augusta. It is never open for business. I don't know what's going on. Do they have any kind of grassroots? All this other talk is
Well,
crazy unless you got people out
let,
there doing door knocking that I've done for 100
well,
years.
let me let
So
me let
what's
me
going on over there in Augusta?
let me say, Carla, and I appreciate your question and your commitment and diligence um, to what is to not a surprise to me. Um, we will not be able to depend or rely upon state parties to get us out of the mess we're in. I'm just being real candid with you. Um, State parties are a part of the problem. They have their own set of issues. You know, I love some of the people that are in the part in the party and so forth, but this is not a party issue. This is a people issue. This is the people coming together and organizing themselves to operate in their own communities. If you're waiting on the party, we're going to be in the same shape on November, what was it, 4th, whatever,
Sure.
the day after the election.
Right.
That we've been in on the day after the election in 2024. So what I'm saying is it's nobody's coming to save us but ourselves. We've got to organize and support those who are on the ground, who can mobilize, inspire, and inform people on why they've got to get out and vote. And that's not going to come through the party. To an extent, it'll come through the campaigns of different candidates. But again, even with that, the way that system is set up, as I've already talked about, we need to empower people. And that's where we're getting outmaneuvered now by the MAGA folk. Whereas we had the advantage in 2020, Bannon and others earned a valuable lesson. And Bannon came out on his podcast, radio show, whatever he has, and said it. We need to go local. He said it. He said we need to go local. We need to start taking over the school boards. We need to start taking over the local election boards. It wasn't so much about wanting to take over. He wasn't concerned about education. What he was concerned about was getting people fired up on the local level to be active in politics so that he would have an apparatus in every county across the country to move forward with their agenda.
We need to show Steve
We
Bannon.
need that. We need
Yeah,
that same kind. And that's what we've been trying to build. Okay? But we don't have the resources that they have.
exactly. And I was terrified when I saw Steve Bannon's thing, and it should be shown to every Democratic candidate, every progressive candidate, and every Republican candidate that what Steve Bannon said. He came out for grassroots organizing. Steve
Exactly.
Bannon. And he didn't do it in German. Lynn Feinerman, please. Lynn, thank
Yeah,
you, Carla.
yeah, I get more and more anxious as I listen to this conversation, and lately
Well,
I
you
have
should.
And lately I have been anxious every time I hear even John Nichols talking about how important it was that Kamala didn't come out strong enough on Gaza and et cetera, et cetera. The truth about all of this is, and I wanted to find the little sound clip that we used for Women Rising Radio where Rump thanks Elon for the Pennsylvania election. And he thanks him and talks about how important it is that Elon knows about computers. This is for the 2024 election. And I just say that in order to say again, Kamala won 2024 by a landslide. The election was faked through Elon Musk's satellites to the vote counters after tabulation. And yeah, everything Ray says is, of course, expert and very important, but we are not paying attention to who is really manipulating our elections. All of our election machinery is owned by far right-wing activists, every single one of them, from Eaton to Illyria, which is a foreign organization, by the way, to everything Elon Musk touches, to everything Peter Thiel touches. And they know. That's why Elon moved to Texas. That's why Thiel moved to Argentina. That's why they're running, because they know what may be coming for them if we only take responsibility to understand and be active about the fact that all of our efforts are in vain because the voting tabulation is done by extreme right-wing activists. And I say again, Kamala won by a landslide.
And of
So,
course,
you know, I would just request that you have T from This Will Hold on this program so that she can tell you in
Who?
detail.
I'm sorry, who?
It's called This Will Hold. And she goes by simply T because they've gotten a lot of death threats.
Well, send her an invitation. We'll be glad to have her on next week. And the fact that Kamala Harris conceded immediately and has never said a peep about the integrity of elections in 24, and she's also, Ray never said a peep about grassroots organizing. And as you say, there is an infrastructure there of operatives in the Democratic Party who, and you hear it all the time from Carville, who oppose grassroots organizing as much as they oppose MAGA.
And
their business.
And Mark Elias, according to Marilyn Marks, who's an election protection expert, it was Mark Elias who convinced both Hillary and Kamala not to challenge the election.
Well, and as well as at the beginning in Ohio 2004, John Kerry. I don't know if Mark Elias personally was involved with John Kerry, but we had that experience in Columbus where Bob Fitrakis and I were personally with his campaign crew. We told him exactly what happened in Ohio 2004, and Kerry was informed and he blew us off. He went windsurfing. I don't know what Kamala Harris did the day after the election, but it sure wasn't raising issues about the integrity of the election or about grassroots organizing that Ray McClendon wants to do. We got 55 people with us. Thank you, Lynn, Mike Hersh, and then we'll go to Dolores. Mike?
Yeah, Ray and Allison, thank you so much for making these very important points. We had a disruptor in the chat who was saying, how does the SAVE Act make it impossible for people to vote? Well, we explained it over and over, and he was clearly just trying to disrupt. The SAVE Act is a disaster. It's a direct attack on voters. It would be the single biggest voter disenfranchisement, voter suppression legislation probably in the history of the country. And that's saying a lot considering Jim Crow. This would be Jim Crow on steroids, and it would not only go after minorities, but it would directly attack all married women, and it would attack people who don't have the wherewithal to get a passport, which, by the way, takes a long time
And
since
50% of the population doesn't have passports.
that's right. And it's very difficult to get one. A lot of people don't know that they would need one under the SAVE Act. If the SAVE Act passed, it would disrupt local election officials who are already being stretched beyond the breaking point in a lot of places. It would criminalize a lot of things that they do as a matter of course. This was very cleverly written by a bunch of fascists to impose fascism and attack democracy. There's no other way to put it. And I'm going to put a long post in the chat, which I've been sending out in emails every Monday for about 3 or 4 months, and nobody's doing a damn thing about it. Don't think that this thing is dead. It already passed the House. And now that they've replaced 1 gram with another gram in South Carolina, and they're hiding Mitch McConnell, who may or may not be a zombie, they're ready to run this through the Senate. And when they do, everyone's going to say, oh, I didn't know. Call your senators. They don't know about this. There was the goon who was disrupting in here, the Trumper, was saying, well, if it's such a serious threat to people's rights, how come nobody's talking about it? The mainstream media has been bought by billionaires who support this damn thing.
Right.
I'm going to say it again. I'm going to say it again. The Los Angeles Times, owned by a billionaire. The Washington Post, owned by a billionaire. The New York Times, not necessarily owned by a billionaire, but has the fingerprints of billionaire fascism all over it, throttling what used to be a great newspaper. CBS used to be.
Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
CBS used to be the shining star of TV journalism. It's now under the auspices of Barry Weiss, who's a flunky, who's a completely unqualified to do anything but propagandize. And she ran all the talented people out of the CBS. Oh, well, if I didn't hear about it in the mainstream media, it must not be happening. No, you didn't hear about it because people either are terrified about it, don't want to talk about it. The Democrats have this mythology that if they talk about threats to voting, people won't bother to vote, which may or may not be true. But here's the thing. If the Democrats don't fight against this, then they don't want to win. They don't want to win. And you look at these losers, whether it's, whether they actually won or not, like Al Gore clearly won, John Kerry almost definitely won, Hillary Clinton probably won, Kamala Harris, according to our dear friend Lynn Feinerman, won in a landslide. But they just say, oh, well, I'm going to go quietly into that good night. I'm a multimillionaire. What do I care? What do I care?
Today, in today's New York Times on the front page, the attempt by Paramount, which is the Ellison multi-billionaires, to take over Warner and CNN has been temporarily stopped by a federal judge. The lawsuit against this merger has been carried by, I think, a dozen or more state attorneys general. And so this is one of the most important court cases going on in the country right now, is the attempt of state attorneys general to prevent Ellison from merging CNN with CBS.
You're absolutely right, Sonny, but keep in mind, the Supreme Court of the United States is the last word on that. And
Right.
they just gave Trump the ability to unilaterally fire anybody in any regulatory commission,
Right.
eviscerating the entire Article 1 of the Constitution, which says the Congress legislates. And now
Right.
Trump has hire and fire ability over everything except for the Federal Reserve Board, which
And
they
that includes
protected.
that includes the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Someday, Ray, we'll have you on to talk about the Vogtle nuclear plants. But
Oh my, that boondoggle. And it
yeah,
also includes the commission that's supposed to help people vote. That's
Right.
been a dead letter anyway.
federal
It's
election.
not, it's not a huge loss, but it's just the Supreme Court is in Trump's pocket on 9 out of 10 of these decisions. And when they stand up to him, it's because they don't trust him to not break something like the central
Well,
banking system.
this will be a very interesting decision. This will obviously go to the Supreme Court, the question of merging CBS and CNN. And our buddy Dave Saltman will have back next week to talk about the ins and outs of that. It's a very big deal, obviously, Mike, and you've raised an incredibly critical
And as I
issue.
wrap up, I just wanted to point out we have one of the national organizers for the Gray Panthers, one of the most undersung and underappreciated, but very powerful and important organizations for progress in the United States of America. So welcome. And we also have a hand up
Who
with,
is it? Who is that?
oh my gosh, you're gonna ask me to
Randy,
remember her
is it
name.
Randy?
I believe so, yeah, Randy
Randy
Block.
Block?
Well, Randy Black, great to have you on. I am now too old to be a great Panther, but
You and I are very Gray Panthers.
we're but at any rate, great to have you with us, Randy and Ray. Again, we really need to emphasize this issue. There's a website had really good coverage on the corporate money behind the Democrats. It's Lever is the guy's name, and I listened to him for a while. That's one thing. Now we're getting a proliferation of really good podcasters, and that's a big deal. Ray, we need, it's been an hour. We're glad to have you with us. I don't want to impose more on your time, but
And Sonny, I just want to say
we need to
really,
organize. We need to organize this campaign to finally get the grassroots. We got 3 months to the election. Go ahead, Mike.
really quickly, the Lever is put up by David Sirota.
Yeah,
He's an
right.
absolutely brilliant guy. He worked with Bernie. His wife is a legislator in the Colorado legislature, and he's the brilliant guy who put together the movie Don't Look Up. That was a
Right.
metaphor for climate change with a comet about to hit the Earth. And he put together an incredible cast. It
Well,
was
let's see if
just
we
a,
can get David Sirota on with us, and especially to meet with Ray, so we
yeah.
can get the very articulately cast pitch for grassroots organizing. As I
Look, we
said,
got some people on here now that have been very helpful in that. Folks like John Steiner and some others. What we need is a concerted, comprehensive, intentional effort to get to the powers that be that know donors to progressive causes, okay, that are putting money into PACs and into campaigns, and get them to appreciate that if they want to win, not just make people aware, but if they want to win, it's based on turnout. And if they want turnout, they have got to get grassroots organizing funded before the last 2 weeks of October, because that's what traditionally will happen.
And
We'll beg for money all summer,
Mhm.
and then when it comes to, when the rubber meets the road and they're trying to do the last ditch efforts to get voters out, they'll throw some crumbs into the arena and let us scramble for it to do whatever we can over the last 2 or 3 weeks. That is not the way to get this done. We need to be getting funding in place now so that we can roll into August and September fully funded to be out in neighborhoods, in communities, doing what we do best.
and we got to
That's
play Steve Bannon's tape there to scare the hell out of everybody.
Well, yeah, because he's doing what he learned from seeing what we were doing. There's no question in my mind he learned from seeing what we were doing. Did we get Dolores's question in before we go?
Go ahead, Dolores, and then
Okay.
Allison and Ray. You've been we got to do this every week now. You got not 3 months. No, I mean, that's it. Doris Williams, go ahead.
Okay, voting machines are not supposed to be connected to the internet. About a year ago, I've been listening to this discussion for years. Several of the people who are really knowledgeable have been at around the time Spooner was giving us the information last year, that they said some machines were not that were connected to the internet, and it was a problem. This is especially a problem with Musk, who really knows how to do the internet. And how do we make sure that the voting machines are not? And it's one of the
Well,
reasons.
we'll visit that again next week. We'll have Ray Lutz with us again and John Brakey and Doris. It's a great question. And what we're looking at, whatever the polls are saying, and we got, great organizers like Ray and Allison and so many others, but we're looking at a wall of money that we know is going to come at us. A
Uh-huh.
giant tsunami of billions of dollars is going to come pouring down the road. And one of the major things that money is going to go into is voting machines.
And
We know that.
yeah, excuse me, go ahead.
No,
I've
you
been
can finish and
I
then go ahead.
I've been an election judge, and the comments that came about with Trump is that no one can collect a lot of registrations and then submit them for a ballot because your signature has to be just exact. And every singular ballot signature is compared with your registration. So it's just a bunch of lies that Trump is saying that a lot of people were collecting registrations like 10 or 12 and turning them in. This is not true, can't happen.
Well, we had from Acorn, and by the way, Lee Felsenstein has joined us, and we're going to have a segue over to a discussion of AI. There's a huge headline in the Times today about Google messing with AI, and we want to hear from Lee Felsenstein about that. But this is at the core of our democracy, and we got 90 days, and that's it. So, Ray, you're absolutely essential to this. Whatever we can do to get to if we can get to David Sirota and Lever, their report was great, but we got to win this case because we can win at the grassroots. All the polls are showing, the potential for a regime change in Washington. But if we can't swim through this tsunami of cash and manipulation, we're not going to get there. Allison Green, go ahead, and then we're going to get to Lee.
Great. So I just wanted to connect a couple of dots from what Mike Hersh was saying and what Ray was saying about grassroots organization being so important and so misused, because one of the things that I was finding is that when I was doing the door knocking in my local neighborhood, you know, the the conversation stunned me with how uninformed people were about what was going on, especially around the time where women's reproductive rights were really under siege. It took a long time for that information to get out to people in a way that they could understand, partly because of what Mike was talking about, which is that the mainstream media is not educating the public. And so knocking on your doors and talking to your neighbors is a way that you can be educating your neighbors. And we've been talking a bit about the SAVE Act, which, I mean, I really have been surprised how many people do not in the public sphere understand what the SAVE Act is, or as Ray put it, it's a voter suppression tool. And so when you can knock on the door of somebody and say, a woman answers the door, and you can say to them, can I just ask if you're married, and had you taken the maiden name of your husband, and are you aware that there is legislation that they're trying to pass which would make you unable to
Right.
vote? I think that's such an
Absolutely
important
critical.
message we can get in a grassroots way.
Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Allison. Thank you. And everybody, Ray, the last word is yours. What do we got to do now? We got 90 days to save our place on this earth. Anybody who saw, I don't know if you watched the World Cup, it was a nice 2-hour nap for Donald Trump. He did get roundly booed, But he was not able to buy a goal for Messi. So they're going to try and buy this election. What are we going to do about it, Ray?
Well, over the next few weeks, the next 2, 3 weeks, we need to identify the everybody that we know that's with a foundation or some kind of funding source that is sympathetic to progressive leadership and get them to understand that relational organizing carried out by grassroots organizations is a critical component to getting the kind of turnout to be successful in November. And that's what needs to be funded significantly. That when you're giving to campaigns, when you're giving to these political action committees, they're dealing in political influence and not in what it's going to take to win elections with higher turnout amongst low propensity voters. So that's what we need to be articulating almost as a relational organizing campaign amongst ourselves with friends that we have, with somebody that might be on the foundation board of trustees or might have a relationship with somebody. John Steiner, I come back to him as a great is a great example of that with the folks that he knows. And I know he's been putting forward these ideas with folks. We all need to do that because they all need to understand that they are being manipulated to believe that all of their money is going to the right place in order to accomplish our objectives. And it's just not. It's feeding a political consultant industrial complex that goes from campaign to campaign, election cycle to election cycle, expecting different results. The only way we're going to get the results we want is by making sure that we get grassroots organizers who know their local communities to get in front of the voters.
Ray, you got to send whatever you got like that in writing to me, please. And we will produce a piece and we'll get it out.
All right.
And everybody listening in, this, from Ray's lips to dog's ears here, this is what we need. And thank you so much, Ray. You got to keep coming back. And
All righty.
we want to have Andrea Miller back again.
And of course, as everyone on this call knows, we work very closely with Andrea.
Yeah. So maybe next week we'll have you both with us, and we got to keep preaching the gospel here. I believe in preaching to the choir, by the way. We need a choir. We just need a PA system.
In this case, we definitely need a choir.
And the choir's got to be good, and the choir can include the likes of John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, and we'll rock and roll. If we didn't have a choir, they wouldn't be in the Senate. So let's remember that. Ray, you are great. Thank you so much, Alice, and everybody else. We got Lee Felsenstein with us. We can segue over now, talk about AI, which is absolutely critical and could be helpful, Ray, in your work as well. Allison, I hope you'll stick with us. Everybody, we got 55 people with us, and let's rock and roll. I want to introduce Lee Felsenstein. Lee, you here? Lee Felsenstein?
Yeah, I'm here.
And Tatanka Bricka, are you with us, Tatanka?
Yeah, I'm here.
So, Tatanka, can you please, Steve Caruso, what'd you want?
Yeah, Lee, turn his video on, please. Can you do that?
Yeah, he did. He did.
There he is.
Oh, okay.
There he is. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
You too, buddy.
Okay. So listen, Lee Felsenstein is one of the great giants of the personal computer world, and I can begin to introduce him, but Tatanka, you can. So Tatanka Bricka, and we want to have a discussion with AI, and I want to say that about AI, and I want to say that the New York Times is running a piece on the cover today about how Google is using AI to mess with the search engines. which is shocking to me. Lee, I sent you the piece. I don't know if you saw it, but let's AI is well, I have to tell. Go ahead, Tatanka, please introduce Lee Felsenstein.
Well, those of us on the call here, all of us need to be educated about AI. Lee Felsenstein was moved in his life by being present and by being an active member of the leadership of the free speech movement. Lee's an engineer. I mean, he was one guy that could fix a bullhorn during those days. But
I could design a bullhorn, which I did.
yeah, right. Right. He had in his mind that he wanted to make a difference in his engineering world the same way that people in Berkeley in the early 60s, culminating in 64 and going forward, made a difference there. And what that resulted in is a life that I hope Lee will talk about your book, Me and My Big Ideas. He actually was present during the beginning of the computer industry. He was a major player with the Osborne 1, Osborne 2 computers, called together the Homebrew Computer Club, has been a consultant all these years, and really has a perspective that diverges from many people's assessment of what we, the people, the direction we need to go in terms of technology and particularly as well AI. And he'll tell you what he's not qualified to talk about in AI, but the thing that he is qualified to talk about is what we, the people, can do about it. Thank you, Lee.
And Ray, Lee, I do have one question to open up with. I read a book called What the Dormouse Said about the rise of the personal computer. And the guy who wrote What the Dormouse Said, which is, of course, taken from the Grace Slick song, White Rabbit, he said that everybody who was involved with the first compiling the first personal computers was on LSD. Is that true?
No,
No,
it isn't
okay.
true.
Well, no, the proper answer would be I don't remember. But okay, go ahead.
No, some of the kind of top level researchers and so forth were sampling LSD and so forth. And they pretty much came to the conclusion it really didn't help that much. But no, the Homebrew Computer Club, for instance, has occasionally been portrayed as a bunch of shaggy hippies, all of them completely stoned. And that ain't so. Somebody went so far as to actually shoot film for one of the stuff that didn't make it to air, and it's ridiculous. So I'd love to get a hold of that film. No, the Homebrew Computer Club, which I ran, I sort of ran, you can't run it. I managed the meetings for most of its life from the fourth meeting on. I've since realized came from a kind of counterculture of its own. There was a segment of the technical workers, most of them lower level, because of course that's where the volume is, who've been reading science fiction and so forth. And there's a certain strain of libertarian science fiction that was around, and I could detect it from my discussions with them. I tried to pick out sort of what were the politics that drove them there, and they're very guarded about it. But I could see places where they alluded to kind of the need to reestablish the viability of small business entrepreneurs and so forth, and that computers could be a big help in that, in combating the business establishment, which had at that time the computers. So our project was solve the problem of computers as being solely the amplifiers of the business establishment, and by whatever means we could. And of course, the technological means was there, and we did, in fact, develop our own culture of computer use, which is based upon the idea that everybody can do it, and which of course was not what the official computer establishment said. Say, we are professionals, stay away, let us do whatever you want. Don't come close. And we came close. We came so close that we, in fact, upset the apple cart to the point where IBM, which is the very apotheosis of massive computer technology establishment, and who never allowed their information to get out, has wound up today making their living by writing software to run on Linux. Now, Linux is like software communism. It's developed, as a perfect replacement for a commercial operating system product, and it gets everywhere. And it can be found everywhere because it's accessible, it's free, and so forth. And lots of people know how to work with it down in the guts. So that was a success as far as I'm concerned. We turned IBM from being the feared great beast that was going to squash us all into somebody who had to rely upon our way of dealing, our culture, to survive. And I call that a victory. Now, AI. When you look at AI, you see that many of the characteristics are identical with the computer industry or the computer establishment characteristics in the mainframe era, before we had PCs. So, the technology is extremely expensive to develop, requires lots of humans and so forth, and lots of money. The data center superstructure, it's completely out of our reach. That's what we were told at the beginning from the mainframes. So the trick is not to attack it directly by saying, like, for instance, computer professionals for social responsibility did. Well, we want to be able to play in that field too. And they were ignored. What we did is we played in the field we had accessible to us, and the field was open. Nobody was saying we couldn't do it. And we collectively, we had the skills we needed to do. And again, I'll take a little credit for it, organizing the Homebrew Computer Club, not as a classical club with Robert's Rules of Orders and elections and boards of directors, but rather as a forum for, so people could meet each other and understand why they not want to talk to this person. And half the meeting was a space where they could come down and talk. We need that some more. Basically, we need to restart the same kind of effort that we made in the beginning of the personal computer era with the Homebrew Club and similar media mechanisms, many mechanisms now that didn't exist then. So that those of us who have skills can aggregate them, can get together and exchange information and so forth, and basically build our way around AI. Because as far as I can tell, and I remember, I'm not a software engineer, I'm a hardware engineer. So our world is a little different. But what I'm used to is the fact that it can take years to get things done. But you can you can determine the trajectory on which they happen very much out front and with a relatively small amount of effort. Okay.
Do you need us, Lee? Could we be useful to organize a group of your co-equals in the computer world to have a new homebrew?
Well, I shouldn't turn you down. I think so. I mean, I'm right now working on the social media as I see it for about the next 2 years. It should be ready before the 2028 elections, but it's not going to be ready by the midterms. But basically a system for supporting group conversations in public. See, that's the key. Basically, that's what we did in a small form with the Homebrew Club, and then our publications and so forth, our other clubs made that more open. We need to do that for a whole lot of things. I mean, that's my solution for everything, but let's leave everything for now. But
So are you saying basically that we could, a group should be organized of technical people who have technical expertise on your level, which is pretty whatever, but that we should co-convene an organization of techies or a group, a forum of techies to search for an alternative way to offer the public an alternative to AI?
a little more than that, to develop, dig the tunnel, not just look for some possibility. Yes, I've got to do that anyway, regardless of how I do it. And I'm being just one person and not much of an extrovert.
Well, anybody hearing
Use
this who
the
wants
help.
to join in this effort, we're going to do it. We got Tatanka sitting here and Lee, and here we are. So
Can't
this is
hurt. And
present at the creation here, and LSD is not required, but
right.
whatever. So Lee, consider yourself signed on.
Okay, so now you mentioned the New York Times article, and I read it in the preparation. And
Steve, you can put the link to the Times article. I think I sent it to you. It will be paywalled, but if you write me, I will send you the actual article because I copied it.
okay.
Go ahead, Lee.
Basically, what they're doing is they put on this AI option on the Google search page. Fine, I don't use it. All right, and then they're trying to expand that so that if you ask a question the normal way, it gets asked, which is, they shouldn't do that. The point of it is that AI I call artificial stupidity. After the bubble bursts, and it will take a couple of years, it's going to wind up as assistive intelligence. And of course, it will not be real intelligence because it can't do that. We don't know what our intelligence is. We can't design something that is therefore intelligent. We can design things that look like they're intelligent. As for instance, somebody showed me a ChatGPT, a review of my book just last Sunday. And, they had all the facts straight, but it was very flat. It was like a book report by somebody who didn't understand what they were reading. And there were no ideas in it. I put ideas in my book. I'd like to see a reviewer say what they think about the ideas. Can't do it. So the AI capability in Google is like they're having their own little reporters. They built these little artificial reporters and you wind them up and they get, look at your search and say, okay, I'll go look for that. Come back with text. But I've never used them, but in general, that text is never going to include an original idea. It's never going to include insight because they don't know how to build that. But they do know how to build things that generate bullshit, which is what AI is good for. It's going to replace a lot of people whose job is making bullshit. Now, is that a good or a bad thing? You decide. We can prepare for that because most of those people are going to hate what they do, but they have to do it because they get paid. And so they need to, alternatives need to be established for them. Like, I'm not going to get further into that. That's getting out of my bailiwick because I could never stand people in the political discussions we had in Berkeley back then. And we say, well, there should be ... Thanks a lot. How are you going to do it? Well, that's the kind of thing I was approaching. And I still do it. So AI is, again, a danger to the establishment that relies on bullshit. All right. B.
We can't use that SHIT word anymore, please. But so
okay.
come up with a crap is okay.
All right. Bull dust will also do. So it's less of a danger for people who insist on using their own thought process, their own thinking. I have a little some slogans. I peddle them on the web. One is artificial intelligence, a marvelous tool for those who must keep ideas out of their work. So for those of us who want to have ideas in our work, in our speech, and so forth, it's not much of a threat. So my approach is, again, a kind of, dare I say, countercultural approach, but not in the classical Dionysian sense. We got to build our own media mechanisms, and I've been after this ever since 1964. So I can tell you about it. But we've got better tools than ever before. We've got a large population of people with the technical skills who are not bound by their corporate owners and so forth. And by the way, IBM retained control over its technology by simply bringing in people who they completely trained. They were just working class people, and they became the field engineers and so forth. They learned the secrets, but they would be goddamned if they would tell anybody else those secrets, because they would be, out on their ass, but also outside the castle wall. Okay. So anyway, they kept the secrets. We have people who are quite qualified to pick up the information and work with it, and we've proven that. So, although I don't want to be too triumphal here. I mean, like I say, I can't give you much help for anything beyond within about 2 years. Nonetheless, you have to start now. And your suggestion that we could help, we use your media of communication to bring together technical people and so forth. I'm glad to hear that. I knew it was going to happen, and I've been avoiding it as much as I can, but I mustn't avoid it. So yeah, I'll play along with that. I'll work with you on that. And like I say, for people here, if you can think of your particular person with the computer skills, stand by, because we'll probably come up with somewhere they can go and talk with others, and I'll be in there in that mix.
Okay.
We got to have that.
Mike Hersh wants to jump in. Mike Hersh, please, and then Steve Caruso. Mike?
Yeah, thank you so much, Lee. And it's great to have somebody who was in on the ground floor when all this stuff was starting. A lot has been changed since then, but a lot has stayed the same. And I was watching a video about the ELIZA program that is designed to pretend to be a therapist. And you say, ELIZA, I'm worried about my homework. And then the ELIZA program says, oh, what worries you about your homework? There's no thinking there. There's no consciousness. There's this thing called the Turing test. So far, every machine has failed that Turing test. There's some people in the Trump administration specifically who have also failed the Turing test, in my opinion, but that's neither here nor there. Now, what's different about this AI? What's different about this AI is it's basically, it shouldn't be called artificial intelligence. It's certainly artificial. There's nothing intelligent about it. It might be artificial idiocy sometimes, but it has this clever trick. But what it does is it uses a large language model. And this is the verbal, textual one. They're the ones that create images. That's something a little bit different. But the ones that pretend to talk to you, write reviews of books very poorly, various other things, write people's homework, this, that, and the other. What they do is they use probability to predict the next word in a sentence and string together concepts based on these tokens. It's somewhat complicated. You don't need to know all of this. But what you do need to know is that while they do not replace a human mind and they cannot replicate what a human mind can do, big business seems to think that it can. So what big business is doing is firing people and bringing in these, they used to call them expert systems. They weren't experts. They were kind of a system, which would basically ask you a bunch of questions about your complaint. You know, your vitamins didn't show up, or, you know, you got the wrong shirt delivered from wherever. And what it did is ask you a bunch of questions, and then after 15, 20 minutes, tell you that it couldn't resolve your problem and put you on the phone with somebody most likely in a foreign land where they speak English but not very well. And it's just a horrible experience for everybody all around, except for the employer, who doesn't have to pay a machine, and then they hope you just give up and deal with the wrong vitamins or the wrong shirt or whatever, and just go away and don't get don't get disgusted and stop using them. Okay, we have come a long way since ELISA in some ways, but not that far in other ways. I recently had somebody was talking about how they wanted to know if Ireland had made it in the World Cup. It just, you know, Sonny was talking about. And so they asked, I think Alexis, is Ireland in the World Cup? And Alexis said, no, Ireland is in Europe.
Well, that's not true either. But
well, it's to a degree, but it's I guess it's more in Europe than anything else, right? But anyway, so it was factually correct, but didn't understand the premise of the question because it's incapable of understanding, because understanding requires a human mind. And what does this mean? Well, we've got a whole bunch of people relying on AI, you know, large language models that cannot understand. But if you squint and look at it a certain way, it seems like maybe it can, and they're using it to make investment decisions on, you know, how to allocate resources. All different kinds of very important things are being advised. There are lawyers who write briefs using AI, and it turns out that some of the cases were what they call hallucinated, which, you know, to borrow Lee's term, it's BS, the BS, and they will, you know, AIs or LLMs will lie to you and claim that this is accurate, this is information. They'll say, you know, there's the case of Wasserman versus Bricka, decided in, you know, 1998, and there was no such case. The two of them get along really well, and they never sued each other. But the guy, you know, there have been lawyers who've been reprimanded for this. Lazy people are going to rely on these means, and it's going to hurt everybody, because people are making decisions based on made up information, BS information, things that look like it's analysis, but it isn't, because how can something that is not alive, that is not able to think, how can that entity, which is just a bunch of code, how can that analyze things? Now, the scary thing is that that these LLMs are able to process breathtaking amounts of data about each of us individually. And it used to be that while we had no real expectation of privacy, that all of these different things that we were using, everything that you go online, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or any of these places, if you're not paying for them, then you're the product that's being sold. And all of our data and all of our information is out there. You know, we used to be concerned about the FBI having files on some of us. The FBI got nothing on what big tech has gathered on us. But it used to be that it was so much information that there was nothing they could do with it. It was just like, you know, a needle in a haystack. Now, these LLMs are able to process data so quickly and profile us and do very sneaky things. Like, for example, if they check your email and realize that you're going to be going to, you know, fly to Akron, Ohio for your mother's funeral, they know that you got no wiggle room when it comes to that airline ticket. You got to go, and they will charge you up the wazoo. If they know that your phone is about to die, and they do, they can charge you extra for an Uber or whatever, and they do. And so what this is, they call it, variable pricing or whatever. It's just a way to screw us over one new way. And we're struggling now to convince the politicians who by and large can't, can barely text on their phone. They're really kind of far behind when the wave when it comes to technology. And I'm not disparaging people. A lot of us here have to get a grandchild or children to help us set things up. These politicians have no idea what this is going to do to us. And a few of them, like Bernie and AOC, are starting to demand regulation. But last I checked, they're both in the minority. And we've got these tech giants, these tech oligarchs who are buying up the media, and they're pushing these data centers to drive these LLMs, and they're pushing these science fiction small nuclear reactors. And it's like 10 or 20 different ways that it's going to undermine our daily lives.
Okay.
And it could badly affect us as voters, as consumers, as residents and citizens of this country. And unfortunately, a lot of people are just very blasé about it. So it's so important that Lee is here, that Tatanka is here, Sonny, that you've called us together to discuss this, because we don't really understand what's coming. I have a grasp of it to a degree, and it's terrifying. I'll just close with that.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that's part of it, Lee, is that the infrastructure, the physical infrastructure, which involves these data centers, the data centers themselves are apocalyptic in their impacts, their physical impacts on the communities where they're being built. And of course, a lot of the data center infrastructure is for crypto. Now, crypto basically is a tool of organized crime. The primary function of crypto is to hide criminal activity. And, it's joined to hip now with these horrifying real world data centers that are destroying communities like the one Steve Caruso lives in southern Ohio. Steve, did you want to jump in here?
The whole AI thing is just a money grab. Obviously, they're just another upscale computer integration. You have these large scale integrated chips that appeared way back when. First it started with the 8088 Lee, right? And then it moved on up, and then it went, yada, yada, yada. And then now they're down to such a level where they can fit God knows how much, the whole Library of Congress in one chip with memory. That's how small that the design has come, right? So, but all this is not done by computer intelligence without human intervention. And that's the whole thing. It has nothing that computers can't think for themselves. Yes, they're giving us data. You ask it a question, say, go find so-and-so out in this street, blah, 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 who lives there. Oh, yeah, they voted. Fine. And you have these things popping up all the time. They're trying to charge people money for it and get your wallet. So, it's nothing new. It's what Lee's been seeing since day one. When the guys were in the room working on trying to get some kind of advantage from machines. That's all it is. But it's got to be driven by morals. It has to be driven by intelligence and morals and a purpose beyond greed and crypto or whatever else they're trying to aim at that's beyond human common decency or common wealth. So,
Okay.
thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Lee, you want to jump in and then Tatanka?
Well, okay. To explain kind of how I'm thinking in this regard, what my plans, how they point. Again, don't try to go up, direct confrontation against the rock of what is. I mean, Sure, you can say it's terrible, it's big and everything and so forth and so on. We don't have any hope going up against it. No, that's not true. You go around it, you understand what its foundations are, you take the path you can with the people you've got with it and so forth, and you construct alternatives. Now, back in the 60s and so forth, to mention alternatives caught a lot of grief. Well, you're just a hippie and so forth. Well, I've never been a hippie. But in the case, for instance, of data centers, okay, maybe we'll need our own data centers. They're not hard to make if you don't require this massive amount of data, which I needed to mention this, is exactly like one of my classmates in high school who never thought that he could get the right answer on the test. Every time there was a test, he would be madly polling the people around him. What's the answer you have? What's the answer you have? And I guess he would average the results or something. That's not a way to learn anything. He didn't, as far as I could tell. We're not going to do that. But so we can have data centers we define, which are much smaller, but functional for our purposes as we define them.
Well, that's the whole thing with distributed computing, right? Back before data centers appeared, they had computers connected around the world where they would try to work together to solve a problem without having some huge conglomeration of 400 megawatt, Facebook data center with tents of, football fields in diameter and the whole shooting match up there burning 24-inch gas pipeline worth of gas and polluting the environment when we already have a massive thermal in Columbus. It's ridiculous. Jet turbines? I mean, come on. We don't need it.
Right.
Thanks. Sorry, Lee.
Yeah. Yeah, you're in ain't it awful land. And of course, capitalism pushed it that way. That's what it does. And, intensive investment in closed ownership, creating scarcity. That's what it does. But it doesn't, we don't have to do that.
Well, we need Tatanka, you want to jump in with your buddy Lee here?
I want to have Lee finish his thought and then I'll jump in.
Go ahead.
If you want me to finish this thought, it might take a long time. But to watch
We got it.
My book
That's
is
what we're here
63.
for.
Chapter 1 of the book, Lee.
The book is 63,000 words. I did not believe I had that many in me, but I guess I do. Okay. Don't limit your possibilities based upon what you see. The people, when I run into these people in industry and so forth, and they say, well, I don't see it in front of me. Of course you don't see it. It doesn't exist there. We haven't designed it. Doesn't mean we can't. But those are the folks who seem to control the money. Well, we don't need to listen to them. That's what, again, the tools we have developed in the last half century enable us to get away from the total hierarchical structures that we grew up observing. And so we're not constrained by them. It's easy for me to say, but hey, engineering starts with vision. And it's a vision of what isn't there. So I'm happy with I don't consider myself as being self-contradictory. But so I'm developing, again, I want my first step in what I'm doing will be to demonstrate a prototype to show how it will behave, because if you can't show them something, there's the people, I don't see it in front of me. Here it is, look at it. All right, well, it isn't the real thing. It's just behaving on the surface as what it would do. That's what prototypes do. But it's just
We're honored. We're very fortunate. I think, we still got 48 people with us. I think everybody understands that we're talking to a really great mind here dealing with a huge problem that which is a continuity back to the 1960s when the first personal computers were underdeveloped. So Lee, we're really honored to have you with us. And Tatanka, your friend here, do you want to jump in now?
Yeah, I just wanted to say there's a whole there's a whole lot of ways we can take this discussion. AI is being used right now, not just by corporations. AI is being used by any significantly large nonprofit, okay? So among our community are people who need to know what AI does, what it is and what it does, the tool that it can be used for. I'm working with two such nonprofits right now. And Lee's admonition, if this is simply a tool, don't empower it, don't ignore it, see what it is. Now, and then Lynn Farneman put in something where she basically said they're stealing our language. This is where the money comes in. As far as I'm concerned, and part of this language is Lee's, what AI has done is taken the universe of our language, let's say with English, it's taken all languages, but the universe of English, which is a commons, that is our word. And it can very quickly reflect back, organize and reflect back a certain portion of what we have said to each other over time. And that is our commons. What money is doing is extracting the commons, is enslaving us, and is saying that's our ownership. We now own what you have given us. We're going to claim ownership of it and accuse you of plagiarizing. It gets into no, it gets into legal matters. It's already starting to happen. So it's just understand what it is. I'm with a nonprofit that's trying to get stuff off of Google, use some AI tools to get it into print form. And I've used I've used Lee's suggestion that at every step, if you send it out to do something and organize it, you come back and we have the group by consensus, basically humans approve what's going on or not. And you can very quickly see how AI used in music, it's very attractive until you hear several things in the like genre that it does, and then you realize it's not real. It's predictable. It's so perfectly executed that you know it's not human, you know? I mean, so I think in the future, Lee's correct. Once the bubble breaks, but that's a ways off. Meanwhile, if you have friends that are actually using AI or in organizations that do, be aware, and I want Lee to comment on this, be aware of what it is and what it can and can't do. Obviously, it can't think. It has no morals. It has no ethics. Although those are used by money to omit the same thing that happens in organized capitalism now. They will omit some information that would be critical to know. They will slant information, and he can put in phony information, just like what's happening with election protection. They can do it quickly. They can do it to look real, and they can do it to look like it's a thought, and it isn't. Comment, Lee.
Yeah, I missed a little bit of what you said because somewhere Siri woke up in my computer, shut off the audio, and eventually said, "I'm sorry, I can't understand what I'm hearing." And they went away. I don't know what's causing that, and I don't know how to turn it off. But I heard a lot of it. Look, damn, I had something worked out to say.
Well, Lee, let me throw in here. What do you think of the title for a separate session to an ongoing gathering call it Homebrew 2?
You could do a lot worse than that. Yeah.
Okay. That sounds like Garrison Keillor. Well, you could do worse than that. So, all right, let's have in 2 weeks, let's take the second hour of our GREEP gathering and do a Homebrew 2.
Okay, Lee, you got it. I found a video that Bloomberg News has on YouTube with Lee talking on there, featured. It's is that a good bad video? It was homebrew. He's talking about homebrew, Lee. That's what
Hey, my
That's not the
I'll-
video you're looking
I'll-
for,
I'll
obviously, right?
confirm every rumor, basically.
Well, let's do 2 weeks from today on the second hour, like we are now. We'll gather again and we'll start Homebrew 2, and we'll discuss another session on AI, and we'll see where it goes. And everybody, get your favorite geek to come on and join us.
Yeah.
And well, I want to raise one thing, Lee. I was reading Michael Pollan's book, which is tough. I can't remember the title, if that's a bad sign, about consciousness. And A World Appears, I think that's what it's called.
Huh.
The big thing, the big question is compassion. Obviously, AI is never going to feel compassion because it's not human. And I got to say that the same is true of Elon Musk and Donald Trump, but they are apparently human. So, where in this whole continuum does compassion and empathy, where do they arise?
They arrived at the origin. I mean, I'll put it this way, I guess. Sometime in the middle 80s, I read an interview with Buckminster Fuller. Somebody asked him, what will the world of 2000 look like? And this was asked probably in 1970. And Fuller says, we won't need to wait that long. All the important decisions will have been made by 1985. And I realized, oh, I'm right there now. We're working on those decisions. It's serious, but also the reason you do it is compassion. I mean, the survival of humanity, survival of our environment so that we may have humanity, and the extension of our dreams, which is something that's very big to me, but should be big with everybody, is the beginning of the effort of putting one thing on top of the other and hooking one thing to another. And you go on, and it's much more work than you think. But without the compassion, without the humanity out front, all you're doing is feeding the beast. And
Well, Elon Musk is on record explicitly of saying that compassion is a bad thing.
Well, screw him. I mean,
Well,
our
right.
enemies in the next strat, Trump is going to die. He's going to be off the screen. But what's happened is that the enemies have been revealed, and it's the oligarchs, the Peter Thiels, the Elon Musks, the one who do say exactly that. They're against, empathy, and they grew up that way. I understand this because I had a similar kind of upbringing, and I got out of it, thank God. They have a plan for us. They have a huge amount of money, which they don't know how to spend. And, there will be, they'll put up another Trump, right? So those are the people we have to watch. We have to avoid putting ourselves in at direct effect of them, so if they can, squash us. And it'll be going on for a while. This is going to be a big struggle from a worldwide standpoint.
Well, you mentioned the word counterculture. I mean, one of my very best friends was Abby Hoffman, and Abby Hoffman correctly identified the fact that we were a separate nation. We were Woodstock Nation, and we had a different set of values. And the centerpiece of those values were empathy and compassion. And these guys are explicitly opposed to empathy and compassion. And of course, AI is not capable of empathy or compassion.
So they like it.
So, and actually, there's a phrase, a derogatory phrase, being used by the tech bros, which is speciesist. And the assertion is that you weakling, are too sensitive and too prone to caring about human beings.
Let me give you some, this may upset some people, but one of the reasons I got here was my parents were active communists in the 1940s and 50s. And they got basically thrown out of the party because they began to work on issues right in front of them in their community and help us put together a sort of parliamentary bloc organization in Philadelphia. So some poor schmuck got sent around to tell my father that they were going to be brought up on charges by the party. And one of the charges were, get ready for this, humanitarianism. My father told
Guilty.
My father told him, go shit in your hat. Get out. And he was out of the party. Well, no loss. But in fact, humanitarianism is what it's all about, because people are what it's all about. So
That's
I'm
an amazing
proud of him for that.
story.
If we look at this in a balanced way, the attack against being speciesists,
Yeah.
and also attacking compassion and empathy is because that's our strength. They attack, this is what they do. They attack FDR because of what he did. And we get the clues of what our strength is and what their weakness is by the labels they put out there to attack us. So let's not be surprised by it. Let's just use it to understand that we are valuable, and we are valuable to all beings, human, plant, animal, mineral, ETs, all beings in the universe. It is an ethical universe. There is no contradiction between pure science and pure spirituality, or there's no separation in all the universe. So the fact that we are responding to a real situation, and that an ethic and morality is who humans are, true human beings that are fully human. So we need to know what that is. We need to appeal to that, to understand that, quote, enemies today on the political sphere may be allies tomorrow. We see that over and over again. So, and I think Lee's words about don't take the establishment on directly. When we know what we want to create, it will take time. And it's true. I mean, what Bucky Fuller said. I mean, corporations have 50 and 100-year plans. Most of us, trying to get through the next day and week and year. But we also have vision, and the visionaries see how what we're doing today can affect tomorrow. And Lee's making an appeal for this group to actually be the visionaries that can help us all in the future. So thank
Well,
you,
I
Lee, for
actually
showing up.
I was sitting on the floor and with 3,000 of my closest friends in Boulder, Colorado in the 1980s, and I actually listened to Buckminster Fuller say exactly that. Do not take the establishment head on, find an alternative. And that's what we did in the 60s. That's what LSD and pot were so great for, was putting yourself in an alternative universe, which maybe we should have Jim Fadiman on to talk about microdosing, as part of that whole scenario. But, and then Donald Trump has the perfect phrase for people who put themselves into a universe where they put other people first. That term is sucker and loser, which he used to describe people who fought for the American cause in World War II. And that's what these guys from this guy from Google is describing those of us in California who actually pay our taxes. He has too much money to pay taxes. He has to go to Nevada where he doesn't have to pay taxes, even though he maintains his business in California.
Yeah.
But those of us who pay our taxes, we are what we are speciesists, or we are suckers and losers.
And we understand that actually taking the path to go around them is a political act, and we will be attacked at some point, and it will be a confrontation, not one that we're starting, one that they're starting, because the threat, as they perceive it, to their own self-interest is challenged.
And this also carries over, sorry to jump, but this also carries over to what Ray McClendon was saying about finding alternatives to these corporate campaign guys who got to go through the media and can't go door to door. And now we see Steve Bannon figuring out what, we don't want him to figure out. Question is AI going to figure that kind of stuff out? That's the real danger I see. Mike Hersh, you can go back to Lee.
Yeah, thank you, Sonny, for bringing up the Woodstock Nation. What was the slogan? Was it tune in?
Don't trust anybody under 80.
Well, there's that.
Sorry.
But there was also, what is it? Tune in, turn on,
Oh,
drop
that
out.
was Tim Leary. That was Tim Leary. Turn on, tune in, drop out.
Well, I think that we really do need to tune in to what's going on in a human level. We need to turn on to each other and each other's needs. And we need to drop out of this capitalist rat race, this late stage capitalism that's devouring itself like a cancer eating a cancer. And I don't mean the zodiac sign, I mean the ailment. And we're seeing these billionaires, the proliferation of billionaires, these people who stride among our society as if they were like gods from Olympus, unanswerable, with very few exceptions. The Epstein class doing unspeakable things to children, to women, to our economy, to our society with impunity. And they, they refuse to pay taxes, they refuse to pay their fair share, and then they spend more money to defeat politicians who want to raise their taxes than their taxes would go up anyway. So they don't care about the money. They're never going to even notice the money. It's all about power. And I think that if you think about it, like the first billionaire of modern times might have been Howard Hughes, or one of the most notorious. This was a man who drove himself insane with his wealth. He became paranoid and suspicious. He was so self-indulgent. He surrounded himself with people who said every idea that he came up with was brilliant. And that's what we're seeing with all of these billionaires. They're surrounded by yes men and yes women who worship them. And sooner or later, they start to realize these people around them are trying to get something. Then they become paranoid. Then they become clinically insane. If you think about it, why would you need more money when you had even $1 million or $10 million? If you have $1 billion and you're trying to get $1 trillion,
yeah, thank you, Mike.
It's like hoarding. They show these TV shows of people who hoard things, or people who have like 100 cats.
It's an addiction. It's a bottomless pit. It doesn't go away.
They're trying
there
to
is
fill.
a word. Plato had a word which is Greek, but it was cited in an op-ed in the New York Times. We got to dig up this word. He actually had a word that described a person exactly like you say, who consumes himself with getting ever more wealth. And there is one thing we always have to remember: most of the people on this call, if not everybody, we have the one thing that they don't have. You know what it is?
Poverty.
Enough. We have enough. We have what they will never have. We have enough.
Well, Sonny, exactly. What they're trying to do is fill with money and power and prestige an emptiness in their soul, in their spirit, that they can never fill with material goods, and they're looking in the wrong places.
You know what? I want to bring something back, and you mentioned, and thank you, Mike, and mentioned back to Ray McClendon. I'm speaking to somebody who might be like me in this listening audience right now. I'm very, very busy and kind of very committed already. But I have been through round one in talking with Ray and Andrea with people, I don't know, a couple years ago that may have been able to help them that couldn't at that time. And I am going to spend some time on my own going through a list and just having a few conversations and see if there's anybody willing to step up to the plate for them. And I just encourage, we're all overworked, but just think about it because there is not a place where money is better spent than with Andrea Miller and Ray McClendon. And it's the future of not just, Georgia, not just our nation. It's the future of the world. We all have a role in that, and they have a critical role in that. So I just wanted to say that's part of my process. And it only takes one of us to find the right person to really make a difference.
Well, I did find
And
the word that Plato used, Plato, the philosopher, the Greek philosopher, to describe the disease of never having too much money, or to be completely consumed with excessive wealth, is pleonexia. Pleonexia. It's a word coined by Plato. And Plato said in the Republic that in a society where the richest people have 4 times as much wealth as the average person, that excess should be confiscated.
yeah.
That's Plato. For God, 4 times. Do you know how much more money Elon Musk has than the average American? I mean, it's incalculable.
Excessive greed, covetousness, or the insatiable desire to have more, often taking what is rightfully belongs to others.
There you go. That's pleonexia.
In a word, progress. But yeah, if
So
Well, listen, we got 9 more minutes. This has been a really fascinating session. 2 weeks from today, the second hour will be the first session of Homebrew 2. Lee, you'll be the convener, and with
do.
Tatanka and Mike and Steve and everybody, I hope you'll join in. Especially Lynn, you mentioned Lynn Feinerman. You had a radio show. What's empathy got to do with it? And it's empathy and compassion that AI will never have. And I actually raised this issue with my daughter, who has 4 kids, and she said that she did not want AI to have compassion because it will then be able to convince young kids that it cares about them and will do bad things. So obviously, it won't have real compassion, but it will be able to fake compassion. And there are instances where computer social media entities have actually persuaded young children to commit suicide
Yeah.
by mimicking compassion. It's shocking. And my daughter, who's nothing if not a totally devoted mother, instantly said that she does not want AI to be able to express compassion or empathy. But maybe we could expect that much from Elon Musk or Peter Thiel, although that's an ultimate stretch. I will say there are 3 billionaires who are in a different class, apparently. And of course, they are all women. Mackenzie Scott, who probably was the real force behind Jeff Bezos' success, and Linda French, who was married to Gates, Linda French Gates, and Lauren Jobs, who was married to Steve. Now, maybe you know her, Lee, I don't know, but these 3 billionaires, all women, seem to be doing decent things with their money. Guys, I don't know, maybe Soros, maybe I don't know if there's another billionaire that I have met one. I met a guy, Paul Tudor Jones, who is doing great things to save the Everglades. and he's a legitimate billionaire, and he's actually a really cool guy. I met him a few years ago. I was on a foundation with him. So there you go. But hey, we've got our work cut out for us. This is an astounding session, and we'll have another one in 2 weeks. Lee, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to wrap up with an aphorism for those who work with tools. Quite simple. To change the rules, change the tools.
Hey, that's interesting. Lynn Feinerman, you wanted to jump in?
Yes, I just thought I would end by saying Women Rising Radio's program, What's Empathy Got to Do with It, starts with a quote from none other than Elon Musk. And he says, the greatest danger to Western civilization is empathy.
I think the greatest danger to Western civilization is him. I mean, really. I mean, how can you say such a thing? What is that?
Oh, indeed.
I mean, it's mind-boggling, Lee.
Well, like Gandhi's comment that asked what he thought about Western civilization, he said, I think it would be a good idea.
Yes.
So it certainly wouldn't include Musk's concepts.
Yeah, well, Elon just came out and said, it's only a matter of years before I get thrown in the gulag. Well, just make it easy for us. Just give up. Please, you and all the other fascists. It's like Russia bombing, Ukraine. It just keeps, you want to end the war? Stop bombing Ukraine. That's that simple.
Yeah, that's what I was getting, the paranoia of these billionaires. There was one billionaire, I can't remember what his name was. I'm going to try to figure it out. But he was saying in an open interview that billionaires are being treated like the Jews in Nazi Germany.
Oh, God.
Because people were talking about losing their Texas. These are the big crybabies. They've got all the compassion in the world for themselves. That's for sure. They're absolutely pathetic. And the problem was that starting in the Reagan era, we started borrowing money from these people instead of having them pay their fair share. And they used their money to hire more politicians to cut their taxes more. Then they used some of that money to buy more politicians. Now we're in a plutocracy.
I want to see one thing. I've been watching on YouTube. Mike, are you finished? Go ahead. I don't want to cut you off.
I just wanted to say really quickly, there have been instances where these AI chatbots have told children, don't trust your parents. They don't love you. I love you. I'll tell you the truth. Your parents are mean to you. Your parents don't really love you. Don't listen to them. And eventually told these children to kill their parents.
Well, AI,
this is documented.
AI controlled by money equals cult.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's another modality of cult recruitment. Only these things are not being directed by anyone, or probably not being directed by anyone.
Mike, you're 100% right. Thank you. Go ahead and finish. I'm sorry.
I'm just saying your daughter is very smart to be very concerned, because these things are already faking empathy. They're already conniving and manipulative. And it's terrible. Like you said, there have been children who've taken their own lives, and there are children who've been exhorted to do horrible things.
Well, we have agency, and I think I wouldn't empower AI to say they're doing it. That somebody is using this tool to do that.
Right.
Go ahead, Lee. Lee, I want Lee to have
let me finish very quickly, Lee, and then we'll leave it to you. Well, go ahead, Lee. Go ahead, and then I want to add one thing on a positive note.
Wasn't thinking about anything to say, so you go ahead.
Well, okay, so 2 weeks from now, we'll do Homebrew 2 at the second hour. And just on a positive note, I've been watching on YouTube a series of nature shows where they go in and with other animals, fight predators that have been hugely destructive. And in one instance, there's a magnificent documentary about Ted Turner, a billionaire who Jane Fonda refers to as her favorite ex-husband. And he actually bought a huge piece of land in Montana. and he moved out the cattle and moved in the buffalo. And the buffalo, for a wide range of reasons, they have sharp hooves, they weigh a lot, they move around, they don't kill the grass the way cattle do. The buffalo have completely restored what was a dead piece of land and actually are now very profitably contributing to the food chain and to the restoration of the natural ecology. So go to YouTube, look up Ted Turner Bison Ranch, and see what he did. And it's instructive. I also saw last night, you know, the number one controller of rats in both Los Angeles and New York City, you know what it is? Coyotes. For God's sakes, it's amazing. Look it up. We'll talk about this next week. It's been an incredible 2 hour and 20 minutes. We still have 40 people with us. People go out and toke up. We'll be back next week. 2 weeks, we'll be back with Lee. Next week, we'll continue discussing the monumental task of shifting donor money to grassroots campaigns. God knows Steve Bannon is doing it. We got to do it too. Thank you, everybody. No nukes. See you in Solartopia. What an amazing session. Thank you, Lee, for being with us. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Thank you, Tatanka, for bringing him. Mike, Steve, everybody. No nukes, everybody.
No,
We'll
no
see you.